We went on vacation to Cyprus with a toddler. The food was amazing, the views were stunning, and the beaches were almost empty, but there were also a few surprises we definitely didn't expect to have, and one mistake that made our traveling around the island much harder than it should have been. In this video I will share our experience of traveling from Romania to Cyprus as a family with a young child, what we loved, what disappointed us, and what we would do differently the next time. So yeah, this June our family traveled from Cluj-Napoca, Romania to Cyprus for an 8-night vacation. We flew into Larnaca and booked our trip through Carpathian Tour. This was actually our second vacation with this tour operator, and overall we have been happy with their service. Our flights were operated by High Sky, both to Cyprus and back. Unfortunately, the airline was probably the biggest disappointment of the trip. On the way to Cyprus, we spent a very long time waiting at the gate for the airport bus. Then, after finally reaching the aircraft, we sat inside the closed bus for 5 to 10 minutes right next to a plane before we were allowed to board. The return flight was not much better. We boarded on time, but then remained seated inside the aircraft for about 20 extra minutes before we took off, and anyone who has a toddler knows that extra 20 minutes of waiting can feel much longer than it sounds. But anyway, the airport in Cluj was actually very comfortable for families. There were 2 children play areas, one located right after the check-in and another after security on a gate. This made waiting much easier because our son could play instead of getting bored. We also appreciated how clean everything was. There was spacious parent and the child restroom where you can change your child or help them to use the potty without standing in line. Another feature we really liked was the free drinking water fountains where you can refill a bottle or drink directly from it. Overall, the airport felt modern, comfortable and family friendly. There were even priority lines for passengers traveling with children. When we arrived in Larnaca, we met a representative from Carpathian Tour. Since nobody else from our flight was staying at our hotel, they arranged a private transfer for us. A taxi driver picked us up directly at the airport and drove us to our destination. Our hotel was located near the village of Pissouri, between Limassol and Paphos. Our hotel was called Hylatio Tourist Village. The hotel was not new, but it was charming, clean and very beautiful. The architecture had a traditional Greek feel, with white buildings, red roofs and blue shutters. There were flowers and greenery everywhere, which made the entire property feel peaceful and relaxing. We booked an all-inclusive package, so breakfast, lunch and dinner were included. The food was honestly excellent. Every evening there was a different international theme, so the menu changed regularly and never became boring. The staff were friendly and some employees even spoke Romanian, so good for Romanian speakers. Most of the guests were retirees from Poland, Romania and United Kingdom. Because of this, the atmosphere was quiet and relaxed. However, there was one thing we hadn't considered before booking. The hotel was clearly designed more for adults and retirees than for families with young children. There was no kids club, no children's entertainment program and no indoor playroom. To be fair, they did have a separate child's swimming pool with a depth only 70 centimeters. Next to the pool was a large box filled with inflatable rings, water toys and pool accessories. Guests were encouraged to use anything they wanted during their stay and simply return it before leaving. I thought this was a great idea. It helps reduce plastic waste because families don't have to buy new toys every time they travel. We actually benefited from this system ourselves. We found beach shoes that protected our feet from rocks and even a beach bag that someone had left behind. These were items we had forgotten to pack, so it was incredibly convenient to borrow them instead of buying new ones. Speaking of rocks, the beach in Pissouri is a pebble beach. Walking barefoot was quite painful, so beach shoes were definitely useful. The beach is public, but still it is clean and well maintained. Sunbeds and umbrella were available, but they were not included. An employee walked around collecting fees. The price was €2.50 per sunbed and €2.50 per umbrella. So if you wanted 2 sunbeds and 1 umbrella, the total cost was €7.50 for the entire day. We only paid for them once. The rest of the time we simply brought a blanket and sat closer to the water. Since we were constantly watching our child anyway, it was actually more convenient for us. The entrance into the sea wasn't very gentle. You could walk approximately 3-5 meters before reaching deep water, which made it not very suitable for children, but it wasn't a big issue for us. The biggest surprise was the water temperature. We visited at the beginning of June, and the sea was colder than was expected. On some days we could swim comfortably for a while. On other days the water felt almost icy. Interestingly, it became warmer later in the afternoon, especially after 4 p.m., but then the air temperature started to cool down. One thing we loved, how uncrowded the beach was. Sometimes, especially in the late afternoon, we felt like we had the entire beach to ourselves. Water sports such as jet skis and paddle boats were available, but surprisingly very few people used them, and we didn't either. There was also a beautiful promenade where we enjoyed evening walks. On our final evening in Pissouri, we decided to explore a little further uphill and discovered a beautiful street with an amazing view of the Cyprus mountains. It was one of those unexpected moments that often become some of the best memories of a trip. The village itself had plenty of cafes and restaurants for different budgets and tastes. We didn't visit them because our hotel food was honestly impressive and it was included, so why not to use it? And also in our hotel 3 evenings per week, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, they had some performers, singers. On Friday it was like Cypriot Culture Day, where there were featuring traditional performances and demonstrations. It was fun, interesting and gave us a small glimpse into local culture. The village also had several small shops selling snacks, local products, souvenirs and beach essentials. This is where I bought most of my souvenirs. I was impressed by both the variety and the prices. There were handmade soaps, olive oil products, vacuum-packed olives, local cheeses, magnets, decorations, jewelry and everything you can think of. Most souvenirs cost between 1 and 5 euros, with many items around 2-2.5 euros. It was easy to find gifts for friends and family without spending a fortune. After about 4 days, we started feeling ready for a change of scenery. Spending every day between the beach and the pool was relaxing, but we wanted to see more of Cyprus, so we decided to visit Limassol. Compared to Pissouri, Limassol felt much larger and livelier. There were museums, family attractions, entertainment centers, a zoo, and many other activities. We visited the zoo. It wasn't very large, but it was pleasant and well maintained. Afterwards, we walked around the marina and explored the waterfront. The beach in Limassol was much busier than the one near our hotel. It also had sandy areas instead of pebbles, and the sea felt slightly warmer. Getting there, however, was expensive. A taxi from our village to Limassol cost €60 one way and €50 on the return trip. If you're planning to explore Cyprus extensively, renting a car is definitely a better option. During June, car rentals cost approximately €30 per day. We actually wanted to rent a car ourselves, but discovered that most vehicles should be reserved in advance. So if you plan to do this, I strongly recommend booking before you arrive. Another important thing to know is that Cyprus drives on the left side of the road. Steering wheel is on the right side of the vehicle, just like in the UK. If you're not used to that, it requires some adjustment. Another practical tip, Cyprus uses British-style electrical outlets with 3 pins, and so you will need adapter for chargers and electronics. We heard they cost around €2 in local shops, but our hotel kindly let us one free of charge. We consider visiting Limassol again, or perhaps spending a day in Paphos, which also has attractions, museums and a zoo. However, without a rental car it simply wasn't practical. Buses are available, but most routes require transfers. Depending on connections, the journey from Pissouri to Limassol can take between 1.5 to 2 hours. With a young child, that's not the most comfortable option. Eventually our vacation came to end. Carpathian Tour once again arranged our transfer back to the airport. We arrived about 3 hours before departure, which turned out to be much earlier than necessary. Even after completing all the security and passport checks, we still reached the gate about 1 hour and 40 minutes before boarding. Unlike the airport in Cluj, we couldn't find a children's play area in Larnaca airport, so we spent our waiting time walking around and exploring. On the positive side, the duty-free section was excellent. There were many well-known brands, plenty of shopping opportunities and a very nice food court. Boarding started on time, but once again high sky delayed the departure. We remained seated inside the aircraft for another 20 minutes before takeoff, as I told previously. Our son slept during both flights, which was a huge help. Unfortunately, on the return flight he was accidentally hit by the arm set while sleeping. Since the aircraft interiors felt quite worn out, the armrests weren't able to fix vertically and hit my son on the face. So he woke up much earlier than expected and wasn't able to fall asleep again. Who can blame him? And just like that, our Cyprus vacation came to an end. Looking back, Cyprus was a beautiful destination for relaxing family holiday. We loved the scenery, the peaceful atmosphere and the friendly people and the delicious food. Pissouri was especially perfect if you're looking for a quiet place to unwind. At the same time, I would recommend renting a car if you want to explore more of the island. Public transportation is slow and taxis quickly become expensive. Despite a few inconveniences with the flights and the surprisingly cold sea, we returned home with wonderful memories, beautiful photos and a lot of appreciation for this Mediterranean island. Would we visit Cyprus again? I think yes. Yes, I think we will one day. But next time we wouldn't buy a package tour with all-inclusive, and we would definitely rent a car from a day one, and we will travel around the island, staying in one place for 2, maximum 4 days. If you've been to Cyprus, let me know in the comments below what your favorite place was. And if you're planning a trip there soon, feel free to ask any questions. I'll be happy to help. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Vapup!